after the major fall we saw for Bitcoin from the April highs above 64,000 down below 30,000 into May, we've seen the price a little bit boring. So is it building a base down here, or actually is this just a pause before the price lurches lower again? I thought we'd do an update on Bitcoin. We looked at it last time around when it was sliding, or after it had slid. We saw, of course, this big fall from 64,000 to 30,000. I thought what was interesting, it did have another very brief look below those lows in June the 22nd, poked down below 30,000 again. We did see it reverse, ended up being a false break. But I thought, well, given it's got quite a bit quieter, the volatility has dropped off over the last month or so, what's the next move for Bitcoin? So as usual in this video, I'll talk about what's been driving it, then we'll come back onto the platform, take a look at things in more detail and see if there's a trade to do. We do have a trade running at the moment. It's underwater. Bought it the 21st of May. Around 38,000. The price is currently 34. The stop is at 27.5, wide stop to take into account the volatility, and we're down about £112. So we'll come back to it and take a look. Do we need to do anything with that trade, and is there another opportunity in Bitcoin from here? Hello, I'm David Jones from Capital.com, and I thought we'd do an update on Bitcoin. It feels like it's got quite dull over recent weeks, so I thought, well, let's take a look at it in a bit more depth after that big slide that we saw, and see what the next few weeks, next few months could hold. So as usual in this video, I'll talk about some of the recent news around Bitcoin. We'll look at the levels to watch, the big levels off the chart. Then as usual, we'll jump back onto the platform, look at the charts in a bit more detail and see if there's a trading opportunity. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, if you could click on subscribe, it does help support the channel. And of course, every Friday now at 2:30 UK time, I run a live stream from our YouTube channel where we look at a whole host of different markets over the course of an hour. If you're subscribed with the alarm bell notification pushed, you get a message off YouTube just as we're going live. Right, that's it. Let's get into Bitcoin in a bit more detail. So if we rewind the clock back to April, we saw Bitcoin move out to fresh all-time highs yet again above 64,000. But the story since then, as I'm sure you're aware, has been somewhat different. So far, we've seen the price slide recently again below 30,000 briefly, trading down to 28,750. So we've seen the price drop by about 55% at its extremes from those all-time highs. So this is the biggest percentage move since February, March of 2020, where it dropped about 59%. We had a few things putting the pressure on Bitcoin and perhaps affecting sentiment. Of course, Elon Musk tweeted that Tesla would stop accepting Bitcoin at the moment in payment for its cars, so reversing a previous decision there. But I think the biggest hit came from China. We had financial regulator in China saying that its banks could not offer crypto as part of any services to its clients in China. So some people perhaps saw that as a step back from the more mainstream acceptance of cryptocurrencies. Then in June, there was a crackdown on crypto mining in certain provinces of China, with some speculating this had affected something like 90% of cryptocurrency mining in China. So it feels like we've had a flow of not too positive news in recent weeks, in the last couple of months. Plenty of volatility. Volatility is, of course, the name of the game in cryptocurrencies. We do see these big swings. But have we seen so much bullish momentum knocked out of the sales of Bitcoin now that it's going to be a long time before it gets back to those all-time highs? Let's talk about the levels to watch, then we'll jump on the platform. So for me, the most immediate level on the upside is about 42,450. We've seen it push up to here and not break. And I think that's the level we need to watch if we're going to see a breakout through here, perhaps a breakout trade, and some more momentum building, and perhaps a more sustainable recovery from where we are now. On the downside, I think that most recent low, 28,750. The low for the year is about 28,000 as well. So far, these levels are holding. I think if we saw that break, the risk is we're going to see the downside pick up. But as usual, to put some color on these numbers, let's take a look at the chart in a bit more detail and see where the opportunity might be. So here's the last, couple of years for Bitcoin. The last time we had a fall this big or bigger than the fall we've been through, we've got to go back to February 2020. So that was the move. I've zoomed things in, Feb 2020. So the market, Bitcoin went from 10,500 down below 4,000. Of course, circumstances were a bit odd back then because that was when we saw the coronavirus pandemic really start to spread around the world. Plenty of markets got hit. The price did recover. Let's bring things back to the present day. So I would argue the trend off those March lows, March 2020 lows, is still intact. That trend line was doing an okay job. Then the price really started accelerating from November of last year. Then, of course, really took off. And we started that surge from December that ended up with it nearly hitting $65,000. No market moves in a straight line, which may come as a shock to some of the crypto faithful who had this great trend from December into April of this year. And I think what's interesting, I think first of all, that trend is still in place. So, of course, if you bought at 64,000 and you're still sitting at 33, that's little comfort. But that overall trend from those March lows is still in place, and at the moment is coming in around the 20,000 mark. So even if the price lurched lower from here, that big trend is still intact. But I think what I want to focus on is what's been going on this year. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the RSI first of all. Now, if we look at what happened when Bitcoin made its low here in May the 19th, we saw it trade down briefly below 30,000. And then it nudges a little bit lower in June. I covered this in the breakout video we did when I was talking about false breakouts and wondered, were we going to see a false breakout downwards in Bitcoin? That's exactly what we got, where the price pushed below the old low, but we didn't get any follow through. What's interesting from an RSI point of view, we have what's known as divergence on the RSI, where the market has pushed lower, in this example, lower than the previous low, but the RSI hasn't followed through. The RSI has made a higher low, so the RSI is almost starting an uptrend, even though the market still looks like it's in a downtrend. And these can be strong signals. I do take much more notice of RSI divergence than just overbought, oversold. So I think it's interesting. I think so. An aggressive trade down here, based off that, would be if I was a buyer now at 33,650, wherever it is. The closest I'd want my stop would be underneath that June the 22nd low, the other side of 28,750. So that would mean, what's that, a $6,000 stop. It's a big stop, or a $5,000 stop. It's still a big stop. But Bitcoin is volatile, as we know with all of these cryptocurrencies. We have plenty of volatility. So for me, that's where I'd be looking to put my stop. I think if we do break below these lows, let's call it 28,000, because it does tie up with the low for the year pretty much, right at the beginning of January. I think we're going to see a more accelerated sell-off if we see another move below those lows. We've had a false break so far. For me, if it moved below again, we could see a lot of people thinking, oh, I'm going to throw the towel in and try and get at least some money back. And then it starts to look interesting when we're looking at this trend line down at 20,000. But for now, I'd still be expecting a bounce following that false break. I think if we wanted to be really patient here and wait for some sort of confirmation that momentum was coming back, personally, I'd need to see a break through at least these mid-June highs at 41,200. Then perhaps we have a breakout to the upside and things get a bit more interesting. But I'd have to say, in the short to medium term, it is boring. Particularly if you've been through the great rise up that we've had since November of last year. But the bigger trend is still up. Markets don't move in one direction all the time. So whilst it has been hit really hard, whilst we have had a fairly sideways 6 weeks or so, for me, that trend is still up. I think it may well take some time until we see anything like the elevated highs that we saw in April. I think a lot of enthusiasm has been knocked out of this market by this big slide and maybe a big dose of reality. But overall, for me, the trend for Bitcoin is up. In the short term, the lows at 28,750 are interesting. I'd be using those for stops. If we break below there, expect a deeper sell-off, and let's see what happens around 20,000. That's it for the update in Bitcoin. We'll come back to it and see how it's performing. But for now, from me, David Jones and Capital.com, we'll leave things there. Good luck with your trading. For more trading videos just like this, please subscribe to our channel.